Hi, welcome to Learning Monkey. I am Raghu here. In this class, we will discuss about constructor. In our previous classes, we clearly discussed about methods, local variables and instance variables. Please watch those classes and come back here. The link for the playlist is provided in the description below. Coming to today's class, before going into constructor, first we have to understand what's the default values for instance variables. So class, we defined a class, open brackets, close brackets. In this class, we defined two instance variables, int p, float q. So we declared the values. So p, q, we didn't assign any value to the variables. But for instance variables, the default value it is going to be assigned is, for p, it is going to be 0. For q, it is going to be 0.0. This is only for instance variables. For local variables, this is not going to happen. So these points you need to understand before we move on to the constructor example. So by default, our Java compiler is going to assign some values, default values to instance variables. What's those values? 0 and 0.0. Now coming to the constructor concept, constructor is a block of code. It's a block of code which is similar to method. Whatever the way we write the method, similarly we will write the constructors also. Method is also having a block of code. Similarly, constructor is also having a block of code. It is called, we call methods. Whenever we need it, we call methods. Similarly, constructor is called when an object of a class is created. Whenever we are creating objects, constructors are called at that time. With example, you will get good idea. First, we will understand the syntax, and one more point, constructor name should be same as the class name. So now with example, class A, open brackets, close brackets. Inside this class, we are having an instance variable int k, and we are having a constructor. We have written a constructor here. What's the constructor name? A. It should be same as the class name. A. Open brackets, close bracket, int p means whenever we are calling the constructor, we need to send a value. What type of value we need to send? Integer type of value. Similarly, methods also, whenever we are calling methods, if you assign this int p in a method, we need to send an integer value. You can mention any number of variables here, any number of data types, not only one. For example, we have taken one int p, comma int k, comma int j, any number of variables. Whenever we are calling the constructor, we need to send the values, similar to methods. Open brackets, close brackets, whatever we have written in between this is what the body of the constructor. So mostly constructors are used to initialize the instance variables. In order to initialization means assigning values to instance variables. Initialize the instance variables. How many instance variables are there here? K, one instance variable. In order to initialize means assigning some value to instance variable, we are going to use constructors. We'll take one big example and we'll understand the execution and memory allocation step by step. Because this is the first time we are discussing about constructor, you need to have that visualization so that you can easily write the code and you'll understand the concepts, programming concepts better. Now this is the class constructor example. Open brackets, close brackets. In this class we are having two instance variables, int p, double q. So by default, what's the values for this? 0, 0.0. And we have written a constructor example. See here, constructor example, same as class name. Constructor example, open brackets, close brackets, int x, double y. Whenever we call this constructor, we need to send two values. One should be of type integer, another should be of type double. Open brackets, close brackets, in between whatever we have written, this is the body of the constructor. What we have written here, p is equal to x means whatever the value we send, that is assigned to p. Y value is assigned to q. What is p? It's an instance variable. What is q? It's an instance variable. So in order to, we initialized the instance variables here. For this purpose, most of the times we are going to use constructor for the initialization of instance variables. And in this class, we are having one method, add method. It is going to add p plus q, and it is going to display the z value. Now coming to the next class, we are having second class, public class test1. Inside we are having main method. So our execution starts from here in the main method. So what's the first line of code we have written here? Constructor example OB is equal to new constructor example of 1, 5.5. So we defined an object for a class constructor example. This is the line. It is going to define an object for which class? Constructor example. What happens when we define an object? Some memory space is assigned to object. How much space is assigned for object? For instance variables. How many instance variables are there for this class? 2 instance variables, int p, double q. Int is needed 4 bytes, double is needed 8 bytes. Total 12 bytes are going to be assigned. Where the objects are assigned memory space? In the heap. These discussions made in our previous class. So whenever we define this object, we defined an object, some memory space is created in the heap. How much space it is going to create? 12 bytes of space for OB. For which object? This is the space allocated for OB object. Inside this, we are going to place p value, q value. What is the p value? 1. Whenever we are defining the object, constructor is called. These values are sent to the constructor. Constructor example, this constructor is going to be called. X is 1, Y is 5.5. X and Y values are assigned to P and Q. So what is P value? 1. What is Q value? 5.5. So for object OB, what is P value? 1. What is Q value? 5.5. So whenever we call this function, whenever this line is executed, automatically constructor is called. For the constructor, we are passing the values 1, 5.5. Means we are initializing the instance variables. For the object OB, initialization of what is the p value? 1. What is the q value? 5.5. After executing this line, what is the second line? Again we are creating one more object for the same class. This is very important to understand. As of now, in our previous examples, we did not define 2 objects for the same class. See, if you define one more object, constructor example OB1 is equal to new constructor example of 2, 6.5. So again, we are defining one more object. We are creating one more object. Again, constructor is called. What is the values that pass it to this constructor? 2, 6.5. What is the p value now? 2. What is the q value? 6.5. So for the second object, whenever this object is created, a new space is assigned in the heap for OB1. For OB1, p value is 2. OB1, q value is 6.5. This is separate space. This space is related to OB object. This space is related to OB1 object. These are the differences you need to understand. Now coming to the next step, what we are doing, ob.addOff. We are calling a method using OB object. Whenever we call the method add, it is going to add the p plus q values in the OB object. What is the p and q values? 1 and 5.5. So if you add those two, what is the z value? 6.5. It is going to display 6.5. So whenever this line of code executed, what is the output you are going to get? 6.5. After completion of this line, next line, ob1.addOff. Using ob1, we are calling addOff function, addOff method again. Understand it properly. This is very, very important to understand. ob1.addOff. So whenever we called ob1.addOff, again this code is executing. In OB1, what is the values of P and Q? 2 and 6.5. That's why each object has its own memory, has its own input values. These are the points in the first class when we discussed class and object using real life example, intuition on class and object. There we clearly discussed that. So each object is having its own inputs. If you understand this point, using class and object is very, very easy. So whenever you call this ob1.add of, what is the output? 2 plus 6.5, which is 8.5. So add function applied on P and Q values. Which P and Q values? This P and Q values. Whenever you called with OB, add function applied on which P and Q values? This P and Q values. Same logic, different inputs. This is the point we mentioned there. Same logic, different inputs. This is how it is going to be executed, and you understand how to use the constructors. Now coming to understand the default constructor. So class A, open brackets, close brackets, int P, add of int K. We have mentioned a method and we have mentioned an instance variable. But we did not mention any constructor. But by Java itself, it is going to create its own default constructor. How it is going to create? A of with same class name, open brackets, close bracket. Nothing is there in this. By default, even though if you don't mention any constructor, by default Java is going to call the default constructor. It is going to create that and it is going to call that. It is going to assign, what is the default value that is assigned to P? 0. So you have to understand that even though if you did not mention the constructor, by default it is going to call the constructor. So what is the difference between constructor and method? So constructors are mostly used to initialize the variables, initialize the instance variables, and some more differences are there. You need to understand that. The first difference is in constructors we should not have any return type. In methods we are going to have return types. Methods can return some values, but constructors don't. This is one of the difference. And the second difference is constructors cannot be static, abstract, final and synchronized. We have not yet discussed about static, abstract, final and synchronized keywords. In the coming classes we are going to discuss about these. Constructors should not be static, means static constructors, static methods, non-static methods. These points we discussed in our last class. Methods can be static, non-static, but constructors are not going to be static, only non-static. And remaining keywords, abstract, final, these are also not allowed for constructors. So as of now, remember these keywords. You are going to understand about these keywords in our coming classes. Hope you understand the concept of constructor. If you have any questions regarding the concept, please post your questions in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel and press bell icon for the latest updates. Thank you.